A baby horse can stand within an hour of being born. Within a day, it can run. A baby giraffe falls 6 feet to the ground at birth. Within 30 minutes, it's walking. Now think about a human baby. A human baby can't lift its own head. It can't roll over. It can't crawl. It can't do much of anything except cry, sleep, and eat. It takes a full year, sometimes more, before it even tries to walk. Here's the strange part. Humans are incredibly smart animals. We're the most capable species on the planet. So why are our babies some of the most helpless babies in the entire animal kingdom? That seems backwards. Shouldn't the smartest species also have the most capable babies? The real answer involves a walking problem, a head size problem, and a trade-off evolution made millions of years ago, a trade-off we're all still living with today. Let's dig into it. First, let's cover one biology term. It explains a lot. Scientists split newborn animals into two rough categories. Some are called precocial. That means born fairly mature and mobile. Horses, giraffes, deer. They can stand and move almost right away. Others are called altricial. That means born undeveloped and totally dependent. Mice, kittens, baby birds, often blind, often hairless, completely helpless. So where do humans fall? Here's the twist. Based on brain size and body structure, humans should probably be precocial, like most other primates. Chimpanzee babies, for comparison, are far more developed at birth than human babies are. But humans aren't precocial. We're not fully altricial either. Scientists often call human babies secondarily altricial. That means something interesting. Over evolutionary time, we likely shifted away from being born more developed. We ended up closer to helpless instead. Why would evolution do that? Why push us backward? To answer that, we need two pieces of the puzzle. Both happened in the human body around the same broad window of time: walking upright and a rapidly growing brain. We've actually covered the walking part in another video on this channel. Millions of years ago, our ancestors began walking upright on two legs. Walking upright required real changes to the pelvis. A narrower, more compact pelvis works better for efficient walking. But here's where things get complicated. Over a much longer stretch of evolutionary history, the human brain was also getting dramatically bigger. A bigger brain needs a bigger skull, and a bigger skull needs to pass through that same narrow pelvis during birth. See the problem? Other great apes face a smaller version of this same squeeze, and it's worth a quick comparison. Gorillas and orangutans also have fairly big brains for their body size. But their pelvis shape doesn't face nearly the same walking-related constraints humans do. Humans are the only great ape that walks fully upright, on two legs, all the time. That single difference appears to make the human squeeze far tighter than anything faced by our closest ape relatives. For decades, this was the leading explanation. It's often called the obstetric dilemma hypothesis. Anthropologist Sherwood Washburn first proposed it back in the 1960s. The idea goes like this. Human pelvises got narrower for walking. Human brains got bigger for intelligence. Something had to give. The proposed solution? Give birth earlier, before the baby's head gets too big to fit. In other words, human babies may be born unfinished, almost on purpose. Waiting any longer could make birth dangerously difficult, maybe even impossible. That's a wild idea, when you think about it. Human babies might be a little premature, permanently, as a species-wide trade-off. There's actual medical evidence that hints at this too. Human babies born a few weeks early often do just fine. Many premature babies catch up quickly, developmentally, once they're born. That wouldn't necessarily be true for most other mammals. It suggests human birth timing already sits close to some kind of flexible edge, not a hard biological wall. Here's a fun fact that tends to surprise people. Picture a human baby staying in the womb as long as a chimpanzee's brain development would suggest. Pregnancy would need to last close to 18 to 21 months, almost 2 years, instead of 9. That's the size of the gap we're talking about. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Not every scientist fully agrees with the obstetric dilemma anymore. In 2012, researchers Holly Dunsworth, Anna Warrener, and colleagues proposed something different. It's often called the energetics of gestation hypothesis. Their argument goes like this: pelvis width alone doesn't fully explain a 9-month pregnancy. Some research suggests human pelvises could handle a somewhat larger baby without major trouble. Instead, they point to energy. A pregnant person's body can only sustain a certain workload for so long. Late in pregnancy, a growing fetus demands more and more energy. At some point, that demand bumps up against the mother's metabolic limits. Under this theory, birth doesn't happen because the head barely fits. It happens because the body simply can't keep fueling that level of growth forever. Both hypotheses are still actively debated today. Many researchers now lean toward a mix of both ideas: pelvis constraints and metabolic limits, working together, rather than one clean single answer. Either way, one thing is clear: human babies are born relatively early, compared to how developed other primates are at birth, and that timing comes with real consequences. Let's talk about what happens after birth, because this is where things get genuinely remarkable. A newborn human brain is already impressively large, but it's nowhere near finished growing. In fact, the human brain roughly quadruples in size between birth and adulthood. A huge chunk of that growth happens fast, in just the first few years of life. Compare that to a chimpanzee. A chimp's brain is already much closer to its adult size at birth. So in a real sense, humans finish outside the womb what other primates finish inside it. A massive stretch of brain development happens out in the open world. Fully exposed, fully dependent. That single fact explains a lot about human infancy. The helplessness isn't a flaw. It's brain construction happening in real time, right in front of us. Here's another fun fact. A newborn human skull isn't even fully fused together yet. It has soft spots, called fontanelles, where the skull bones haven't fully joined. This isn't a defect, it's a feature. Those flexible gaps let the skull compress slightly during birth. They also leave room for that explosive early brain growth afterward. Now here's a question worth pausing on. If all this helplessness is risky, and it clearly is, what's the actual benefit? Why would this trade-off be worth it? The answer seems to come down to learning. Being born with an unfinished brain means that brain gets shaped in real time. Shaped by the specific world a baby is born into: language, culture, relationships, skills. Most of it gets wired in after birth, rather than pre-programmed before it. A precocial animal, like a baby giraffe, arrives with most of its behavior already built in. It doesn't need to learn to walk, it just walks. A human baby is different. It arrives with a brain that's remarkably open-ended, ready to be shaped by whatever complex social world it happens to land in. That flexibility comes at a cost: years of total dependency. But it may be exactly what allowed humans to develop such rich language, culture, and cooperation in the first place. This leads to another major idea. It's sometimes called the cooperative breeding hypothesis, closely linked to anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy. The idea is this: human infants are demanding, for a very long time. A single mother alone likely couldn't manage it, throughout most of human history. So human babies may have evolved to depend on a wider support system: fathers, grandmothers, older siblings, extended family and community members. Researchers sometimes call these extra caregivers allomothers. Under this theory, extreme infant helplessness and strong social bonds may have evolved together, hand in hand, each one reinforcing the other, over time. In other words, human babies may be so helpless partly because humans became so social. And humans may have become even more social, partly because our babies were so helpless. It's a genuinely fascinating feedback loop. This idea also connects to something modern parents feel personally, even without knowing any of the science behind it. Raising a human baby has never really been designed as a one-person job, not evolutionarily anyway. Many researchers point out that modern life often strips away that wider support network. Extended family, living far apart, smaller households. Less day-to-day help from grandparents, neighbors, or community members. There's a mismatch here between how humans evolved to raise babies and how many families actually live today. That mismatch may help explain why early parenthood can feel so exhausting for so many people. It's not a personal failure. It may simply be a very old system, missing several of its original pieces. Let's talk about crying for a second, because even that turns out to be more clever than it first seems. A human baby can't walk, can't talk, can't really do anything physical to get help, but it has one powerful tool: its voice. Some researchers argue that human infant crying evolved to be specifically hard to ignore, sharp, unpredictable, emotionally urgent. It's not just noise, it's a signal, built by evolution, to pull adult attention in fast, even from a distance, even in the middle of the night. In a species where babies can't do anything else for themselves, that one loud tool may have mattered enormously. Let's cover a few more fun facts before wrapping up, because there's more surprising material here. Fun fact: human infants are born with a strong grasping reflex, sometimes strong enough for a newborn to briefly support their own weight, gripping an adult's fingers. Some researchers think this is a leftover trait from our primate ancestors. Their infants needed to cling tightly to a parent's fur while being carried around. Fun fact: despite being physically helpless, human newborns are remarkably socially switched on, almost immediately. Research shows newborns prefer looking at human faces over other patterns, within hours of birth. Fun fact: human childhood is unusually long, compared to almost every other primate. Some researchers argue this isn't just a side effect of slow development. It may be an evolved feature in its own right. Extra time for the brain to soak up complex social and cultural information, well before full adulthood arrives. Let's put a number on that, because it's genuinely striking. Many other mammals reach reproductive maturity within a year or two, some much sooner than that. Humans typically take well over a decade, over 10 years of continued growth, learning, and dependency, before anything close to full physical and social maturity. That's an enormous evolutionary investment. A long, expensive childhood, paid for across generations. In exchange for a brain built to handle almost anything a complicated social world can throw at it. One more fact worth knowing. Some researchers think this whole trade-off runs even deeper. Big brains, narrow hips, helpless babies, extended childhood. All of it may have quietly reshaped human relationships too. Long-term pair bonding, close-knit extended families, small cooperative communities. These patterns may be connected, at least in part, to one simple fact. A human baby needs an enormous amount of ongoing help just to survive. So after everything, here's where this leaves us. Human babies are helpless because two enormous evolutionary pressures collided: walking upright, which narrowed the pelvis, and a rapidly expanding brain, which needed more room and more time than pregnancy alone could give it. The compromise was simple, in theory, and enormous in practice. Give birth earlier. Finish a huge amount of brain development out in the open, surrounded by other people. That helplessness isn't a design flaw. It's the price of admission. The price for the kind of brain and the kind of complex social life that makes humans who we are. It's strange to think about. A crying, helpless newborn is really the direct result of two of our species' most defining traits: walking upright and having a giant brain, colliding, quite literally, inside the birth canal. So here's something worth thinking about. Human intelligence essentially required babies to be born unfinished, dependent, needing an entire community just to survive. So how much of what makes humans special might actually be rooted in how helpless we all once were?